A young girl sat beside her father in the clinic, her behavior unsettling. She avoided all eye contact, shifting nervously in her chair. At first, the staff dismissed it as typical pre-appointment anxiety. But when the doctor performed an ultrasound, he stared at the screen in disbelief and felt a wave of panic begin to rise. The evening atmosphere settled over Pinewood, a humble town nestled in California's Redwood County. Dr. Thomas Bennett glanced at his watch as he hurried out of an exam room. At 52, he had established himself as a respected family physician in the residential district, and his private practice, opened just a few seasons ago, was steadily growing its clientele. "Maria," Dr. Bennett called, approaching the reception desk. "Mrs. Rodriguez left this." He handed an eyeglasses case to the assistant on duty. "I'll call her right away," Maria replied, taking the case and tucking it into a drawer. As Dr. Bennett turned back toward his office, his gaze swept over the waiting room, now nearly empty as closing time approached. His attention landed on two figures in the far corner, a burly man in a light blue collared shirt and a young girl in a red sweatshirt. A flicker of recognition crossed his face. "Victor!" Dr. Bennett called out, walking over with a genuine smile. "Victor Eagle, right? I didn't know you had an appointment today." Victor stood, extending a hand. "Dr. Bennett, good to see you." "We're neighbors, Victor. Please call me Thomas outside the exam room." He turned his attention to the girl, whose gaze remained fixed on the floor. "And this must be Sofia. I don't believe we've been formally introduced, though I've seen you around the neighborhood." Sofia gave the barest hint of a nod, never looking up. "We'll be with you in just a moment," Dr. Bennett assured them. "I'm just finishing up some paperwork." Back in his office, Dr. Bennett sat at his desk, organizing files from his previous appointment. A moment later, Maria Sanchez, his medical assistant, entered the room. She began methodically disinfecting the examination table and instruments, preparing for the next patient. "Dr. Bennett," Maria said in a low voice, "there's something strange about that father and daughter waiting outside." Dr. Bennett looked up from his papers. "What do you mean?" Maria's expression was tight as she wiped down the ultrasound machine. "When I was taking the girl's vitals, her father wouldn't let her speak. Not even to give her own name, he kept answering everything for her." She shook her head. "I had to remind him multiple times that I needed the answers directly from her. And the girl, Sofia, she won't make eye contact, not once." Dr. Bennett leaned back in his chair. "I know them, Maria. They live just 3 houses down from me. Victor can be a bit overbearing. Some fathers are just like that." "I'm of Mexican heritage too, doctor," Maria replied. "And this isn't cultural. It's something else." She paused, then shrugged. "But you know them better than I do. Maybe it's just their family dynamic." She handed him the girl's medical chart. Dr. Bennett's eyes widened as he scanned the documented symptoms. 14 years old, showing indicators of pregnancy," he murmured. Maria nodded grimly. "That's why I'm worried." "Send them in," Dr. Bennett instructed, adjusting his lab coat and composing his features. The door opened and Victor led Sofia inside with a firm hand on her shoulder. The girl moved tentatively, her body tense, the red sweatshirt hanging loosely around her frame. "Thanks for seeing us, doctor," Victor said, taking a seat beside the exam table, "especially this late." "Of course," Dr. Bennett replied. "What seems to be the problem?" Victor cleared his throat, looking uncomfortable. "It's difficult to say, but my daughter is pregnant." Despite having seen it in the chart, hearing it so bluntly made Dr. Bennett's stomach tighten. He glanced at Sofia, who remained silent, studying her hands clasped in her lap. "I see," Dr. Bennett said carefully. "Sofia, how have you been feeling?" Before she could answer, Victor cut in. "She's been experiencing morning sickness, fatigue, and recently she's mentioned some abdominal discomfort." Dr. Bennett kept his focus on Sofia. Sofia, would you prefer to answer these questions yourself? The girl gave a nearly imperceptible nod. And how did this pregnancy come about? Dr. Bennett asked, directing the question to Sofia. Again, Victor answered. She has a boyfriend. We don't wish to discuss him. His tone made it clear the subject was closed. Doctor, Victor continued, leaning forward. We need this to be kept private. No one can know about this. Not our neighbors, not anyone. Patient confidentiality is standard procedure, Mr. Eagle, Dr. Bennett assured him, though he found the emphasis odd. I can't discuss any patient's situation with others. Good, Victor nodded. Dr. Bennett turned back to Sofia. I'd like to perform an ultrasound to check on the baby and determine how far along you are. Is that all right with you, Sofia? She nodded, still avoiding his gaze. Maria will help you onto the exam table, Dr. Bennett said, preparing the ultrasound machine. You'll need to lift your shirt just above your stomach. Maria gently guided Sofia to the table. The girl winced in pain as she lay back. Does that hurt? Maria asked softly. Sofia nodded. The abdominal pains have been getting worse, Victor explained from his seat. Dr. Bennett applied the gel to Sofia's abdomen, noticing how she flinched at his touch. He moved the transducer across her belly, watching the monitor intently. What he saw made him pause. This is, he began, adjusting the equipment for a better view. Sofia, you appear to be about 28 weeks along. Victor's eyes went wide. That can't be right. It hasn't been that long. Dr. Bennett gave him a sharp look. Have you taken her to an obstetrician before now? No, Victor said. This is her first medical visit for it. Dr. Bennett continued to examine the ultrasound image. It's a girl, he said. Then his brow furrowed. But I'm seeing some concerning signs. Her abdomen isn't matching the typical growth patterns for 28 weeks. This suggests what we call intrauterine growth restriction, or IUGR. What does that mean? Victor asked. It means the baby isn't developing at a normal rate. This can happen due to placental issues, maternal health problems, or fetal conditions. Dr. Bennett moved the transducer again, monitoring carefully. I'm also detecting an irregular fetal heartbeat. He turned to look directly at Victor. Mr. Eagle, I strongly advise you to take Sofia to the hospital immediately. She needs specialized care that I can't provide here in my office. Victor's face darkened. The hospital? Why can't you just prescribe some medicine? This requires advanced monitoring and possibly intervention, Dr. Bennett explained patiently. The hospital has the equipment and specialists needed to properly track the baby's development. They can perform Doppler studies to assess blood flow to the baby and check for any organ under development. Victor looked resistant, but Dr. Bennett pressed on firmly. I can give you a prescription for prenatal vitamins, calcium, and folic acid to help with nutrition, but that's not enough. She needs to be seen at the hospital. He wrote out the prescription and handed it to Victor. The pharmacy next door is still open. You can get this filled while Nurse Maria helps Sofia clean up. Victor looked uncertainly between the doctor and his daughter. She'll be fine, Dr. Bennett assured him. We're just going to wipe off the gel and print the ultrasound images. She'll meet you at the pharmacy in a few minutes. Victor reluctantly took the prescription and left the room, glancing back at Sofia one last time before closing the door. As soon as he was gone, Maria began to gently wipe the gel from Sofia's abdomen. Are you going to be okay, honey? She said quietly. Sofia's eyes suddenly filled with tears. She kicks when she hears his voice, she whispered. I hate that she responds to him. Dr. Bennett and Maria exchanged alarmed glances. The statement hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. Sofia, Dr. Bennett said carefully. What do you mean by that? But Sofia had retreated back into her silence, her momentary openness gone. Dr. Bennett tried to rationalize her words. Perhaps she was upset about the pregnancy and projecting those feelings onto her father. Or maybe Victor had been angry about the pregnancy and she was expressing resentment. "What's done is done," he said gently. "Your father brought you here because he's concerned for your health. We need to focus on making sure you and the baby are okay. That's why it's so important you go to the hospital right away." He handed Sofia the printed ultrasound image. She took it, her gaze fixed on the black and white picture. To her, it looked more like an abstract pattern than anything recognizable. Through the glass panel in the door, Dr. Bennett could see Victor returning from the pharmacy. The moment had passed. Maria helped Sofia sit up, and they prepared to leave. Dr. Bennett watched as Victor collected his daughter, his hand placed firmly on her shoulder as they walked out of the clinic. After Victor and Sofia left, Maria returned to the exam room, her expression troubled as she gathered the remaining ultrasound printouts. 9 o'clock, she announced, glancing at her watch. "That's it for today, right?" Dr. Bennett nodded, still disturbed by Sofia's enigmatic statement. "Yes, they were our last patients." Maria began powering down the ultrasound machine, her movements efficient but her expression thoughtful. "That was unusual, don't you think?" she finally asked. The girl hiding a pregnancy for 28 weeks, and what she said when her father left the room. "I know," Dr. Bennett agreed, leaning against his desk. "It was certainly strange." "What do you think she meant?" Maria pressed. "About the baby kicking when it hears his voice, and that she hates that it responds to him." Dr. Bennett ran a hand through his hair. "I suppose she must have hidden the pregnancy from her father until recently. That's why he only brought her in now. Maybe he was upset when he found out, and that's why she's lashing out." Maria looked unconvinced. "But she specifically said the baby kicks when it hears his voice, and that she doesn't like it. Don't you find that peculiar?" "It could be teenage hormones combined with pregnancy hormones," Dr. Bennett suggested, though the explanation felt inadequate even to him. "Mood swings and emotional intensity are common in both." Maria nodded slowly, though uncertainty lingered in her eyes. "I hope they go to the hospital like you advised." "Me too," Dr. Bennett said. "That baby needs proper monitoring." They finished locking up the clinic, turning off lights and securing cabinets. The rest of the staff had already left, leaving the two of them to close the building. They stepped out together into the cool night air, the parking lot nearly empty. "Have a good night, Doctor," Maria said, heading toward her car. "You too, Maria. See you tomorrow." Dr. Bennett got into his sedan, starting the engine as he pulled out of the lot. His mind kept replaying the appointment, searching the interaction between father and daughter for clues. Something felt wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on it. As he turned into his neighborhood, the streetlights cast long shadows across the quiet residential road. He slowed down as he approached the Eagle residence, 3 houses down from his own. Their car was parked in the driveway. "They didn't go to the hospital," he muttered to himself, a spark of concern igniting in his chest. He continued on to his house, pulled into his own driveway and cut the engine. Sitting in the darkness of his car, he debated. Maybe they hadn't understood the gravity of the situation, the irregular heartbeat, the growth restriction. These weren't minor issues, especially for a 14-year-old mother. He should just go inside, have dinner, and be done with his day. It wasn't his job to chase down patients who ignored his medical advice. But Sofia's words echoed in his mind. "She kicks when she hears his voice. I hate that she responds to him." With a sigh, Dr. Bennett got out of his car and walked back down the street to the Eagles' house. The lights were on inside, a warm glow emanating from the windows. He hesitated, then knocked firmly on the front door. After a moment, the door opened. Victor stood there, surprise flashing across his face before he composed it into a neutral mask. Dr. Bennett, is everything all right? Just checking in, Dr. Bennett said, trying to keep his tone casual. I noticed your car was here and got worried since I'd recommended you take Sofia to the hospital immediately. Victor's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Ah, yes, thank you for your concern. Sofia has gone to the hospital with her mother. I just stayed behind to finish up some work. Dr. Bennett blinked, taken aback by this information. It was the first mention of Sofia's mother being involved. I see, he said carefully. That's good to know. I was worried about the baby's condition. Yes, well, she's in good hands now, Victor said, his tone abrupt. Thanks for stopping by, doctor, but it's getting late and I have work to finish. Of course, Dr. Bennett nodded. Sorry to bother you. Good night, Mr. Eagle. Good night. The door closed, leaving Dr. Bennett standing alone on the darkened porch, a cold knot of dread tightening in his stomach. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving Dr. Bennett standing on the porch with a knot of unease tightening in his gut. As he walked back toward his own house, Victor's explanation echoed in his mind. He could only hope the man had been sincere. Inside his kitchen, Dr. Bennett opened the refrigerator and stared at its contents. His appetite soured by the persistent feeling that something was deeply wrong with the girl. He pulled out the previous night's leftovers, pasta with chicken, and placed them in the microwave. As he waited for the meal to heat, Maria's concerns replayed in his thoughts. The way Victor had dominated the conversation, answering questions meant for Sophie. The girl's reluctance to make eye contact, her cryptic comment about the baby, and now Victor's claim that Sophie had gone to the hospital with her mother. The microwave beeped, but Dr. Bennett barely registered it. A realization struck him. Despite living just 3 houses down from the Eagle family for over a year, he had rarely seen Sophie or her mother outside. He knew Victor had a daughter, but their interactions had been limited to occasional waves from the driveway or brief exchanges at neighborhood gatherings, always with Victor alone. As for his wife, he couldn't even recall the last time he'd seen her. He carried his plate to his home office, a compact room with a desk, a computer, and shelves crowded with medical volumes. Setting his dinner aside, he opened his laptop and navigated to Facebook. This is probably crossing a few professional lines, he muttered to himself, but something isn't right. He searched for Victor Eagle and quickly located his profile. Victor's privacy settings were minimal, allowing Dr. Bennett to browse through his photos and information. He scrolled through the friends list looking for anyone who might be Sophie's mother. Laura Jensen, he read aloud. The name was vaguely familiar, like a whisper from long ago. Her profile picture stirred something in his memory. The woman's face bore a subtle resemblance to Sophie, and he was almost certain he had seen her before, sometime in the past. He clicked on the profile, scanning the limited information visible to the public. Laura's page had few recent photos with either Victor or Sophie. In fact, scrolling through her timeline, Dr. Bennett noted a distinct absence of family photos for several years. There were pictures of Laura at work functions with friends, but none with her daughter. If they're separated, that would make sense, he mused aloud. But then, why would Victor say Sophie went to the hospital with her? Dr. Bennett knew he was overstepping professional boundaries by investigating his patient's family this way. But Sophie's well-being, and potentially her safety, overrode his hesitation. He clicked the messenger icon and began typing a message to Laura. Hello, Mrs. Jensen. I apologize for contacting you this way, but I'm Dr. Thomas Bennett, a family physician who examined your daughter Sophie today. I just wanted to check in on how the hospital visit is progressing. Again, my apologies for the intrusion. He paused before sending, aware this message could upset her or create confusion. But his concern for Sophie won out, and he sent the message. Dr. Bennett ate his dinner while periodically glancing at the screen for a reply. None came. He cleaned his plate, changed into more comfortable clothes, and prepared for bed, checking his phone one last time before turning in. As he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, his phone chimed with a notification. He grabbed it quickly, seeing a message from Laura Jensen. "What hospital visit? Is something wrong with Sophie?" Before he could type a reply, his phone began to ring. A Facebook call from Laura. He sat up in bed and answered. "Hello, this is Dr. Bennett." "Doctor, what's going on?" Laura's voice was strained with worry. "What do you mean, a hospital visit? I'm not at any hospital with Sophie." Dr. Bennett's stomach dropped. "Mrs. Jensen, I examined your daughter at my clinic this evening. She was brought in by her father, Victor. She's approximately 28 weeks pregnant." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. "That's impossible," Laura whispered. "I haven't seen Sophie in almost 3 years. Victor and I divorced 10 years ago. He has full custody and I'm not allowed near her." Dr. Bennett closed his eyes. The pieces were beginning to fall into a horrifying pattern. "Mrs. Jensen, I need to explain the situation clearly. Sophie came to my clinic with Victor tonight. She's in her 3rd trimester with intrauterine growth restriction, which means the fetus isn't developing at a normal rate. This can happen due to placental issues, maternal health problems, or fetal conditions." He took a breath. "I also detected an irregular fetal heartbeat. I advised them to go to the hospital immediately so specialists could perform Doppler studies and assess the baby's development. If there's organ underdevelopment, especially in the lungs and brain, there are treatments that could help before it's too late." Laura was silent for a long moment before she responded. "Oh my God," she finally said, her voice cracking. "My baby. She's only 14. How could this happen? Who did this to her?" "Victor said she has a boyfriend," Dr. Bennett replied, though he now questioned everything Victor had told him. "I don't know what to do," Laura said, sounding overwhelmed. "I want to see her right now, but I'm not allowed near her. The restraining order—" She trailed off. "Please, doctor, make sure she's okay. If she's not, contact the police. I don't care if Victor reports me for violating the order. This is my daughter we're talking about." "I understand," Dr. Bennett assured her, "but we must be cautious. Sophie is in a delicate condition and we don't want to trigger premature labor by causing her additional stress." "You're right," Laura agreed reluctantly. "What will you do?" "I'll check on her again," Dr. Bennett promised, "and I'll keep you informed. For now, it's probably best you stay where you are." After ending the call, Dr. Bennett accessed his clinic's electronic medical records from his laptop. He pulled up the ultrasound images from Sophie's exam, studying them carefully. The images confirmed his initial assessment: restricted growth, potentially compromised placental function, and worrying indications of decreased blood flow to the fetus. It meant less oxygen and fewer nutrients were reaching the baby, a situation that could deteriorate rapidly. The clock on his nightstand read 10:15. It was late for a house call, but the man had clearly lied to him while his daughter needed medical attention. Dr. Bennett decided this couldn't wait until morning. By then, Victor could be at work or come up with another excuse. Dr. Bennett quickly changed back into street clothes and left his house. The night had turned cooler. A light fog was beginning to settle over the suburban neighborhood. The Eagle House loomed against the night sky, its windows still lit. He approached the front door with determination, ready to confront Victor about his lie and insist Sophie get immediate medical care. He knocked firmly, rehearsing what he would say when Victor answered. But when the door opened, it wasn't Victor who stood in the threshold, but Sophie. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw him. "Dr. Bennett?" she whispered, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "Sophie," he said softly, Did you go to the hospital? She shook her head, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her sweatshirt. Sophie, I need you to tell me the truth, Dr. Bennett said, keeping his voice low. What is going on here? Why did you hide your pregnancy for so long? Sophie opened her mouth to speak, but before she could say anything, Victor's voice boomed from inside the house. Who is it, Sophie? Is that the delivery guy? What's taking so long? Fear flashed across Sophie's face. Please, you have to go, she whispered, already closing the door. Please. Dr. Bennett put his hand on the door, stopping it from closing completely. Sophie, I can help you. Let me help you. I can't, she breathed, pushing against the door to shut it. Dr. Bennett was left on the porch, conflicted. Technically, he had done his duty. He had informed Victor of the risks and urged him to seek hospital care. He couldn't force them to follow his advice. But something in that house felt wrong, deeply unsettling, and he couldn't just walk away. He had made a promise to Laura, and that promise still held weight. As he turned to leave, the front door swung open again. This time, Victor stood in the doorway, his expression dark with irritation. Dr. Bennett, he said, his voice tight, why do you keep coming to my house? It's late at night. Mr. Eagle, Dr. Bennett began, struggling to maintain a professional tone. I'm concerned about Sophie's condition. You told me she went to the hospital with her mother, but I've just learned that isn't true. Victor's jaw tightened. Have you been investigating me? Who I take my daughter to see is none of your business. As her doctor, her health is my business, Dr. Bennett countered. The baby's condition is serious. Delaying treatment could lead to complications or worse. Victor glared at him, about to reply when a light flicked on in the house next door. A curtain moved. Someone was clearly watching the late-night confrontation unfold on the porch. Victor's demeanor shifted abruptly. Perhaps we should continue this conversation inside, he suggested, his voice suddenly conciliatory. No need to disturb the whole neighborhood. Dr. Bennett hesitated, then nodded. Victor stepped back, allowing him into the house. The living room was sparsely furnished with a worn sofa, a coffee table, and a wall-mounted television. Sophie was perched on the edge of the sofa, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes fixed on the floor. Sophie, Dr. Bennett said gently, how are you feeling? Victor cut in before she could answer. She's fine, just tired. Pregnant women get tired, right, doctor? Dr. Bennett turned to face Victor directly. Mr. Eagle, you need to understand the gravity of the situation. The ultrasound showed intrauterine growth restriction and an irregular fetal heartbeat. These conditions require immediate medical attention. And she'll get that attention, Victor replied, his tone placating but his eyes cold. First thing tomorrow morning. Why delay? Dr. Bennett pressed. Why not tonight? Because it's late, Victor said, gesturing to the clock on the wall. Sophie needs her rest. She's exhausted, and dragging her to an emergency room where we'll wait for hours is not what she needs right now. The baby could be in distress, Dr. Bennett argued. Every hour matters in a situation like this. Victor's expression hardened. The baby won't die overnight. Dr. Bennett recoiled at the coldness of the statement. Before he could respond, the doorbell rang. Victor's shoulders relaxed slightly. That must be the delivery guy. I ordered dinner for us. He turned to Sophie. You wait here with the doctor. I'll get the food. As Victor walked to the door, Dr. Bennett seized the opportunity to move closer to Sophie. Are you okay? He asked in a low voice. Is there anything you want to tell me? Sophie glanced toward the door where her father was paying the delivery driver, fumbling for change in his pockets. Then quickly, Sophie pulled several folded photographs from her pocket. She pressed them into Dr. Bennett's hand just as Victor turned back toward them. Dr. Bennett discreetly slid the photos into his jacket pocket without examining them. Sophie leaned closer and whispered, More in bedroom. I will help you. Dr. Bennett promised, keeping his voice low. You are being very brave. Victor returned, holding a pizza box. What are you two talking about? Sophie was just telling me she's hungry. Dr. Bennett improvised smoothly. Which is good. She needs proper nutrition. See? I'm a good father, Victor said, placing the pizza on the coffee table. I make sure she eats well. He turned to Dr. Bennett, his demeanor shifting from defensive to dismissive. Now, I appreciate your concern, doctor, but it's getting late. As you said yourself, pregnant women need their rest. If she doesn't get proper sleep, that would be bad for the baby too, wouldn't it? Dr. Bennett recognized the dismissal. Yes, rest is important, he conceded, but so is medical care. And she will get it, first thing in the morning, Victor insisted. I promise. Seeing no way to press the issue further without escalating the situation, Dr. Bennett reluctantly moved toward the door. I'll check in tomorrow to see how the hospital visit went, he said, a clear message that he wasn't dropping this. Of course, Victor replied, his smile not reaching his eyes. Good night, doctor. As Dr. Bennett walked away, he glanced back through the window and saw Victor and Sophie sitting at the table, the pizza box open between them. Victor was talking, his gestures animated, while Sophie remained still, her eyes downcast. Once back in his own house, Dr. Bennett quickly pulled the photographs from his pocket. What he saw made his blood run cold. There were 4 photos, each showing Sophie in various states of undress on what appeared to be a bed, with Victor clearly visible in the images. The photos documented the abuse in graphic detail. Oh my God, Dr. Bennett whispered, his hands trembling with rage and disgust. He quickly placed the photos face down on his desk, unable to look at them any longer. Sophie's words from the clinic echoed in his mind with a new, horrifying context. He kicks when he hears his voice. I hate that he responds to him. The truth crashed down on him like a physical weight. Victor wasn't just Sophie's father, he was the father of her baby. There was no boyfriend, there was only a predator and his victim living just 3 houses away. Dr. Bennett reached for his phone and dialed 911. Emergency services, the operator's voice crackled. What is your emergency? I need to report child abuse and endangerment, Dr. Bennett said, his voice firm despite the turmoil churning inside him. A 14-year-old girl, 28 weeks pregnant. The father is the abuser, and the girl and her unborn baby need immediate medical attention. While he waited for the police to arrive, Dr. Bennett's mind raced. The photos in his possession were damning evidence, but he needed to ensure they reached the proper authorities. He also had to alert Laura to what was happening. He took pictures of the printed photographs with his phone, making sure the images were clear enough to serve as evidence if the originals were somehow lost or destroyed. Then he sent them to Laura via Facebook Messenger, along with a brief message explaining that he had contacted the police and they were on their way to Victor's house. His phone rang almost instantly. Laura. I'm on my way there right now, she said, her voice raw with emotion. That monster. I'll kill him myself. Laura, please let the police handle this, Dr. Bennett urged. They're on their way. The most important thing now is to get Sophie out of that house safely and to a hospital. How could this have happened? Laura sobbed. How could he do this to his own daughter? I knew something was wrong when he fought so hard for custody. But I never thought he could. I'm so sorry, Dr. Bennett said, finding no better words of comfort. But Sophie reached out for help tonight. She was incredibly brave, and now we can get her away from him. I'm still going, Laura insisted. I need to be there for my daughter. Of course, Dr. Bennett agreed. Just please let the police do their job first. After hanging up, Dr. Bennett paced his living room, glancing out the window every few minutes for any sign of the police. It felt like hours, though his watch told him only 20 minutes had passed since his call. Finally, he searched. saw the flashing lights of patrol cars turning onto his street, moving slowly without sirens. A tactical approach, meant to avoid alerting Victor. Dr. Bennett hurried outside to meet them. 3 police cruisers parked a short distance from the Eagle House. 6 officers emerged, and Dr. Bennett approached the one who appeared to be in charge. "Dr. Thomas Bennett," he introduced himself. "I made the call." The officer nodded. "Detective Reynolds, do you have evidence of sexual abuse?" Dr. Bennett handed over the photographs. "These were given to me by the victim less than an hour ago. She indicated there are more in the house." Detective Reynolds examined the photos, his expression hardening. "And the girl is pregnant?" "Yes, 28 weeks. There are serious medical concerns for both her and the baby. She needs hospital care immediately." Another officer approached. "The house is quiet, Detective. Lights are still on inside." "All right," Detective Reynolds said, handing the photos to another officer who placed them in an evidence bag. "Dr. Bennett, please wait here. We'll approach the house." The officers moved toward the Eagle residence, positioning themselves strategically around the property. Detective Reynolds and another officer went to the front door while the others covered potential escape routes. Dr. Bennett watched as Detective Reynolds knocked firmly on the door. There was no response. He knocked again, louder this time, announcing police presence. Still nothing. The officers exchanged glances. Detective Reynolds spoke into his radio, and moments later, officers at the rear of the house confirmed they could see movement inside, but no one was approaching the door. After several more attempts, Detective Reynolds made a decision. "We're going in," he announced to his team. "Possible minor in danger inside." An officer brought a battering ram. They positioned it against the door, and with 3 solid impacts, the door frame splintered and gave way. Dr. Bennett remained at the perimeter as instructed, straining to see what was happening. Officers poured into the house, their voices calling out, "Police! Pinewood Police Department!" Neighbors had begun to emerge from their homes, drawn by the commotion. Victor's next-door neighbors, an older couple who had watched the earlier confrontation from their window, approached Dr. Bennett. "What's going on?" the woman asked, holding her robe closed at her neck. Before Dr. Bennett could answer, shouts erupted from inside the house, followed by officers racing upstairs. Then came more shouts, this time from outside the house. "There, on the roof!" someone yelled. Dr. Bennett looked up to see Victor climbing through an attic window onto the roof above the garage. He was pulling Sophie behind him, his grip tight on her wrist as she struggled to keep her footing on the steep pitch. "Stay back!" Victor screamed when he saw the officers below. "I'll push her if you come any closer. We're a family. If I go down, we all go down together." Sophie was crying, her free hand protectively covering her pregnant belly. "Please, no," she pleaded, her voice carrying on the night air. "Please help me." The police below immediately fell back, radioing for additional support. Dr. Bennett heard them requesting paramedics and what sounded like an inflatable landing pad. "Victor?" Dr. Bennett called out, stepping forward despite an officer's warning. "Don't do this. The police have the photographs. They know everything." Victor's face contorted with rage. "She gave you those photos, you little traitor!" He spat at Sophie. "After everything I've done for you, you don't deserve to live." A car screeched to a halt at the edge of the police perimeter. Laura jumped out, running toward the house before an officer intercepted her. "That's my daughter!" she screamed, fighting against the officer's restraint. "Sophie, I'm here, baby, I'm here!" Sophie's tear-streaked face turned toward her mother's voice. "Mom!" The momentary distraction was enough for Victor to pull Sophie closer to the edge of the roof. The officers below had managed to deploy a large, inflatable safety mat, positioning it beneath where they stood. "Victor Eagle," Detective Reynolds called through a megaphone. This is Detective Reynolds with the Pinewood Police Department. Let the girl go and give yourself up. There's nowhere for you to go. Dr. Bennett could see officers now positioning themselves in the attic window, ready to apprehend Victor from behind. But Victor saw them too. "Get back!" he shrieked, yanking Sophie closer to the edge. "I'll jump with her if I have to." Laura broke free from the officer holding her. "Please, Victor, she's our daughter. Don't hurt her." "She's mine," Victor snarled. "You never deserved her. You never deserved either of them." In that moment, Dr. Bennett realized with a sickening horror that Victor meant both Sophie and her unborn baby. His possessions, his to control, his to destroy. The officers in the attic window began to emerge onto the roof. Victor, seeing his escape route blocked and the authorities closing in, made his decision. "No!" Dr. Bennett screamed, but it was too late. Victor shoved Sophie off the roof. She fell with a terrified shriek, landing on the inflatable safety mat below. Officers immediately rushed to her aid while others swarmed toward Victor, who tried to leap in a different direction to escape. He didn't get far. Two officers tackled him in mid-air, bringing him down on the roof's surface with enough force to knock the wind out of him. They quickly handcuffed him and began the process of getting him down safely, though with considerably less gentleness than they had shown Sophie. Dr. Bennett ran to where Sophie lay on the safety mat, paramedics already checking her vital signs. "I'm her doctor," he explained, kneeling beside her. "Sophie, can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open, tears streaming down her face. "The baby," she whispered. "Is the baby okay?" Dr. Bennett placed a gentle hand on her abdomen, feeling for movement. "We're going to get you to the hospital to make sure, but I think she's going to be okay. You were so brave, Sophie, so brave." The night air was filled with the flashing lights of police cars and ambulances. Officers led a handcuffed Victor to a waiting patrol car, his face a mask of rage. As they passed Laura, who was anxiously watching the paramedics attend to Sophie, Victor spat in her direction. "This is your fault!" he snarled. "You were never a real mother to her." Laura lunged forward, her composure shattering. "You monster! What you did to our daughter! You're not human!" An officer stepped between them, guiding Laura back as his colleagues pushed Victor into the police car. "He should rot in prison forever," Laura sobbed as Dr. Bennett came to her side. "I always knew something was wrong with him, but this—" "You couldn't have known," Dr. Bennett said gently. "Predators like Victor are masters at hiding their true nature." The paramedics had stabilized Sophie on a backboard and were preparing to load her into the ambulance. Dr. Bennett guided Laura toward them. "She needs you now," he said. "Focus on Sophie, not on him." Laura nodded, wiping the tears from her face as she approached the gurney. When Sophie saw her mother, her eyes filled with fresh tears. "Mom," she whispered, holding out a trembling hand. "I missed you." Laura took her daughter's hand, kissing it as tears streamed down her own face. "I missed you too, baby, so much. I'm here now and I'm never leaving you again." Dr. Bennett addressed the lead paramedic. "I'm her physician. I'd like to ride with you to the hospital if that's all right." The paramedic nodded. "We could use your input on her condition, doctor." As they loaded Sophie into the ambulance, Detective Reynolds approached Dr. Bennett. "Doctor, we'll need to speak with you at the hospital. And you as well, ma'am," he added to Laura. "But for now, go with your daughter. We'll meet you there." Laura climbed into the ambulance beside Sophie, never letting go of her daughter's hand. Dr. Bennett followed, sitting across from them as the paramedics continued to monitor Sophie's vitals. In the ambulance, Dr. Bennett used his stethoscope to listen for the baby's heartbeat. "The heartbeat is still irregular, but it's strong," he told Sophie. "The fall doesn't seem to have caused any immediate trauma, but the hospital will do a more thorough exam." The ambulance sped through the quiet streets of Pinewood, its siren wailing. Dr. Bennett watched as Laura stroked Sophie's hair, whispering words of comfort. Despite years of separation, their bond remained, a testament to the resilience of family ties in the face of monstrous interference. They arrived at the hospital, where an OB emergency team was waiting. Dr. Bennett briefly explained the situation to the attending physician, Dr. Gabriela Ramirez, a specialist in high-risk pregnancies. 28 weeks with IUGR and a fetal arrhythmia, he summarized as they wheeled Sophie into an exam room. Also potential trauma from a fall, though she landed on an inflatable safety mat. Dr. Ramirez nodded. "We'll take it from here, Dr. Bennett. Thank you for your quick action tonight." As the medical team began their work, Dr. Bennett joined Laura in the waiting room. Detective Reynolds arrived shortly after, accompanied by another officer and a woman who introduced herself as Sarah Parker from Child Protective Services. "We need to understand exactly what happened tonight," Detective Reynolds began. "Dr. Bennett, please start from the beginning." Dr. Bennett recounted the evening's events, from Sophie's visit to his clinic, to his growing concerns and eventual discovery of the truth through the photographs. "Victor claimed the baby's father was a boyfriend," he explained. "But Sophie's comment at the clinic about the baby kicking when she heard his voice, it takes on a horrifying meaning now." Detective Reynolds nodded grimly. "We found a hidden room in the basement, just as you suspected from what Sophie told you. It appears to be where much of the abuse took place. There were cameras, recording equipment, and other items." Laura covered her mouth, stifling a sob. "His bedroom contained hundreds of photographs of Sophie," the detective continued. "Some dating back several years. This has been going on for a long time." "How could this happen?" Laura asked, her voice cracking. "How could nobody notice?" "Predators like Victor are skilled at isolation and manipulation," Ms. Parker from CPS explained. "They gradually sever their victims' ties to support systems, friends, family, even school. We'll have a clearer picture once Sophie is able to give her statement." Detective Reynolds turned to Laura. "Mrs. Jensen, we need to understand how Victor gained custody of Sophie. It could help us build a stronger case against him." Laura dabbed at her eyes, her expression grief-stricken. "I'm not proud of what happened. After Victor and I divorced 10 years ago, I was a single mother working nights at a casino. We were struggling financially." She took a steadying breath before continuing. "I started going to underground poker games, thinking I could stretch my paychecks and give Sophie a better life. But it quickly became an addiction. One night, the house was raided, and that's when the police discovered I had left Sophie, only 7 at the time, home alone." Tears streamed down her face. "Victor seized the opportunity. He presented himself as the stable, responsible parent. The court awarded him custody, and I was only granted supervised visits. Then he moved to Pinewood and took out a restraining order, claiming I was unstable and a bad influence on Sophie. He systematically isolated her." Mrs. Parker nodded. "It's a common tactic. I've spent the last 3 years rebuilding my life and moving to this neighborhood," Laura said. "I have a stable job now and an apartment with a second bedroom ready for Sophie. I've been saving every penny I could to fight for custody again. But Victor blocked every attempt I made to contact her." Dr. Ramirez emerged from the exam room before anyone could respond. All eyes turned to her, expectant. "Sophie is stable," she reported. "The baby's heartbeat is still irregular, but we've started medication to help with that. We've also begun steroid injections to accelerate fetal lung maturation, which is crucial in cases of IUGR. She is severely malnourished and shows signs of long-term stress and trauma, but physically she should recover." "And the baby?" Laura asked. "We are monitoring the situation closely," Dr. Ramirez said. "The next 48 hours will be critical. The fall doesn't appear to have caused any placental abruption, which is good news, but the pre-existing conditions, the growth restriction and the cardiac irregularities, remain a serious concern. Can we see her? Dr. Bennett asked. Dr. Ramirez nodded. She's asking for her mother and for you too, doctor. She says you saved her life. The hospital room was dimly lit, the steady beeping of monitors creating a rhythmic backdrop. Sophie lay propped against pillows, an IV in her arm and fetal monitors strapped across her swollen abdomen. Despite all she had endured, there was something different about her now, a light in her eyes that hadn't been there before. The weight of her secret had been lifted. Laura approached her daughter's bed, her steps hesitant, as if she feared Sophie might vanish. "Sophie," she whispered, gently taking her daughter's hand. "My brave, beautiful girl." Tears welled in Sophie's eyes. "Mom," she said, her voice stronger than it had been before. "You came back for me." "I never stopped trying to come back," Laura assured her, perching carefully on the edge of the bed. "Your father made it impossible, but that's over now. He can never hurt you again." Dr. Bennett stood respectfully at the foot of the bed, giving mother and daughter space for their reunion. Detective Reynolds and Mrs. Parker from Child Protective Services waited near the door, understanding the delicacy of the moment. After a few minutes, Sophie looked over at the doctor. "Dr. Bennett, thank you," she said simply, "for believing me, for helping us." "You're the brave one, Sophie," the doctor replied. You found the courage to ask for help, and that's what saved you and your baby." Detective Reynolds stepped forward. "Sophie, I know this is difficult, but we need to ask you some questions to help build our case against your father. Would that be all right?" Sophie looked to her mother, who gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. "It's your choice, sweetheart. Whatever you decide, I'm right here with you." Sophie nodded slowly. "I want to tell the truth, all of it." "Take your time," Mrs. Parker said gently. "And if you need to stop at any point, just say so." Sophie took a deep breath and began to speak, her voice gaining strength as she continued. "There was never any boyfriend." She confirmed what they already suspected. "My father is also my baby's father." She described how Victor had started abusing her shortly after getting full custody, how he had systematically cut her off from the outside world. He pulled me out of school, saying he'd homeschool me, but there were never any real lessons, just enough so I could answer basic questions if anyone asked. The abuse had escalated over the years. When anyone came to the house, he would lock me in the basement. There's a hidden room down there that he built. That's where most of it happened. Dr. Bennett thought of the evidence the police had found in that basement room and felt a wave of nausea. "When I got pregnant," Sophie continued, "he was angry at first. He talked about making me get an abortion, but then he changed his mind. He became protective of the baby. He said it was ours." She shuddered at the memory. "The baby started kicking a few months ago. I noticed she would kick whenever she heard his voice. It made me sick. I hated that she was responding to him." Sophie placed a protective hand over her belly. "But it's not her fault. She's innocent in all this." "Of course she is," Laura assured her. "I started feeling really sick about 2 weeks ago," Sophie explained. "Bad stomach pains and dizziness. He ignored it at first, but when I could barely get out of bed, he finally decided to take me to a doctor. That's when we went to Dr. Bennett's clinic." Detective Reynolds nodded, taking notes. "The photographs you gave Dr. Bennett, how did you manage to get those?" "My father took pictures, all the time," she said softly. "He kept them in a box in his closet. I stole a few while he was in the shower tonight before we went to the clinic, knowing he'd be out of the house to take us there. He hadn't let me leave in so long. I didn't know what to do with them, who to trust. But when Dr. Bennett came to our house, I thought maybe he could help." "You did exactly the right thing," Dr. Bennett assured her. Dr. Ramirez returned to check on Sophie, assessing the fetal monitoring strips. The medication seems to be helping with the cardiac irregularities, she reported, and your own vital signs are stabilizing, Sophie. That's excellent news. What happens now? Sophie asked, looking between the adults in the room. Mrs. Parker stepped forward. You'll stay in the hospital until you are medically cleared. After that, we'll need to determine the best living situation for you and your baby. She's coming home with me, Laura said firmly. I've been preparing for this for years. I have a room for her, savings for her care, everything. Mrs. Parker nodded. Given the circumstances, that seems like the most appropriate placement. We'll need to conduct a home evaluation, but as long as everything is in order, I don't foresee any issues with Sophie being placed in your care. And what about my father? Sophie asked, her voice hesitant. He's in custody, Detective Reynolds assured her. Given the evidence we've already collected, the photographs, the hidden room, your testimony, he'll be facing multiple felony charges, child abuse, sexual assault, incest, child endangerment, and more. He won't be getting out of prison for a very, very long time. Sophie nodded, a mixture of emotions crossing her face, relief, sorrow, and something that looked like closure. What about the baby? She asked, turning to Dr. Ramirez. Will she be okay? We're doing everything we can, Dr. Ramirez promised. The next few weeks will be crucial. We'll continue the steroid injections to help her lungs develop. Monitor her heart closely and focus on improving your nutrition to give her the best possible chance. I want to keep her, Sophie said quietly, surprising everyone in the room. I know I'm young, but she isn't responsible for how she came into this world. I don't want her to suffer for what he did. Laura squeezed her daughter's hand. We'll raise her together, she promised. You, me, and your daughter. She will be loved and she will be protected, always. As the night deepened, Detective Reynolds and Mrs. Parker departed, promising to return the next day. Dr. Ramirez completed her exam and left to check on other patients, leaving Laura settled into the chair beside Sophie's bed, unwilling to leave her daughter's side for a moment. Dr. Bennett was also preparing to leave, his professional duties fulfilled, but his heart was still heavy with the weight of all he had witnessed. Dr. Bennett, Sophie called as he reached the door. Thank you for listening, for seeing that something was wrong. He turned back to her, struck by the resilience in her young face. I'm just glad I could help. You did more than help, Laura said. You saved them both when everyone else looked away. As Dr. Bennett drove home in the early hours of the morning, the streets of Pinewood quiet and empty, he reflected on the night's events. His decision to follow his instincts, to push professional boundaries when a child's welfare was at stake, had made all the difference. The neighborhood was silent when he returned. The Eagle House, now a crime scene, had yellow police tape marking its perimeter. The neighbors would wake up to a changed street, a community forced to confront the horror that had existed in its midst unnoticed for years. Dr. Bennett walked into his own home, exhausted but at peace with the choices he had made. In the medical profession, the mandate was clear: first, do no harm, but sometimes doing good required more than just the avoidance of harm. It required action, courage, and the willingness to see what others overlooked. As he finally lay down to rest, Dr. Bennett thought of Sophie and her unborn daughter. Both victims of unspeakable cruelty, both now with a chance for a new beginning. Their road to healing would be long and difficult, but they would not walk it alone. Sometimes, he reflected as sleep finally claimed him, the most important diagnosis was the one that went beyond medical symptoms, the one that recognized the human suffering beneath the surface, the silent screams for help that came in the form of averted eyes, cryptic words, and desperate, brave acts of trust. In the end, it wasn't just medical knowledge that saved lives. It was compassion, attentiveness, and the courage to act when others turned away.